Corey and I have come out to sit in a minute on the porch and take a little break. We've been drying apples this morning, doing some other stuff Corey's been helping me with. Corey's having her a snack. I should have brought me some ice water because it is hot. It is so hot. We're having a heat wave in southern Appalachia. Probably a lot of you may be experiencing it too. I know it's hot in a lot of places across the country. What would we say, Corey? It's hotter than the hinges of hell. That's one I always liked.
Hotter than a $2 pistol. I like that because that's in a song that I know.
Yeah, I have a video I'll link to about hot sayings. How hot is it from last summer that you can check out. Lots of great, colorful sayings. It's one of my favorite things. The Appalachian language is so rich and colorful. Why just say it's hot when you could say it's hotter than the hinges of hell? You know, all those kind of things. It just really makes me be in love with our language. But while we were sitting here, we thought we'd update you on a few things. One of the things is the community center. So many of you sent prayers and donations and good thoughts and good wishes and ideals about what we might be able to do to help the community center, and we appreciate all of that. Thank you so much. So they had their first singing on Saturday night, June 11th, and it was really good. It had good attendance. They sold a lot of hot dogs and hamburgers to help pay for their light bill. But better than that, they got several people that said, here's my name and number, call me, I want to help, I want to be part of it. So that was the best part. So thank you so much for everyone that sent their good wishes and their donations and all those things. The community center really appreciates it, and we do too.
Yeah.
So what else have we got going on? Matt and I finally got our garden laid by. So laying by the garden means that you kind of have it took care of. Of course, we've got to continue to weed and maintain, and you know, the tomatoes will need attaching to the cattle panel as they begin to grow up. Of course, the harvest is still to come, all those kind of things. But the laid by is kind of like for us, in the old days, it was the last time they hoed the corn. That was it. They'd done all they could do. The corn was tall enough to outshade all the weeds, and that it was either going to make it or it wasn't. But man, that was all that man could do to help it. So, but for us, that usually means when we lay by the garden is when we actually cover everything in a layer of mulch. And that mulch protects it from getting too dry, helps retain moisture, helps keep down those horrible weeds that we all hate weeding. And just helps as it decomposes, it'll help enrich the soil too. So it's always a good feeling. We have not laid by Granny's garden. That's next on our list, but it's really small and it won't take long compared to ours.
I need to do that to my garden this weekend, get some mulch from over here and do that.
Yeah. And Corey's been having a real struggle. What was it you called it?
I said the slug struggle. I said sluggle, I think is real.
Yeah, slug struggle is real. She's been fighting slugs, having a terrible trouble with slugs eating her stuff. I've never had that problem here. I'm thankful because it sounds like it's horrible. Yeah. So Corey's been out during the night slug hunting and trying all different kinds of remedies. I think you finally bought some stuff that's supposed to help. Mm-hmm. But that's a pest that I've never had to worry about.
Well, I never thought it was a big issue until you go out at night and shine your flashlight and you're like, these are going to eat my house overnight. There's so many. It's very disturbing.
Yeah. I wonder if it's one of those things like a lot of pests that if you can break their life cycle, then maybe you'll have less next year, I hope. If you have any experience with slugs, I'm sure Corey would appreciate your tips.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I did buy some slug magic though, and it's like bait, and then I guess it poisons them and kills them, but you set it out, and that's much easier than trying to go out with a salt shaker at 9:30 and hunt some slugs.
Yeah. And we don't like to harm anything,
no, I feel
even
so
a slug.
bad having to do that.
But when it comes to your food, you have to protect your food. That's just like one of those hard lessons of life that you have to learn. A crow is my favorite bird. If you didn't know that, I love crows. I think they're mischievous. I think they're troublemakers sometimes, but I love to listen to them talk. I love the interactions. They have this elaborate, because I like crows, I've studied before, they have this elaborate, like, what would you call it, tribal system of how they interact with each other and how they train each other. It's amazing. I really love crows. But I don't like it when they if you've ever planted corn and you didn't have something to scare the crows off, they will trying to get the little kernel of corn. It almost looks like they pulled up the corn when it's about that big and just laid it down there for you all nicely. Well, you can't replant that. So all your hard work's done. Now, I've had that happen to me on a small scale, which is still very frustrating. But when it happened, like in Pap's big garden, which was a big field of corn, that was just a tragedy, because you have to do all that work again. But then also, you have to, you may not, the growing season's only so long in a place like this, so then you're fighting against that time frame. So although I hate, I think there's nothing cuter than a grasshopper. They're so cute. Or, I don't really think slugs are cute, though.
If they have a shell and they're a
yeah,
snail, then they're cute.
But then if they're eating your livelihood, what you have to feed yourself, you just have to, sometimes you have to take that hard line, killing slugs and, warding the crows off, or making sure they don't come nearby.
True.
That's the life of a gardener, though. Yeah. Always facing something, whether it's the weather or a pest. On these hot days like this, especially when Matt and I was working outside, if you watch our videos, one of our favorite things to do is have a popsicle break. We like to eat popsicles. So a lot of you have asked what kind do we like. I've never really had a bad popsicle, but the ones that I like that I buy, the ones me and Matt have been eating that I've been buying for the last couple of years, are called Outshine, is the brand name of them, and they're kind of like an all-natural popsicle, I guess is how you would describe them, right, Corey? Mm-hmm. But they're really good. Now, I've never tried, they have a creamy one. Someone left a comment on the last video about a coconut one. I've got to look for that and try that one. I've not tried those, but every flavor that I've tried we really liked. I'm not like a sour kind of person as much as Matt, but I got him some, I don't remember if those are lime ones.
Yeah, seems like it.
And he really liked those too. I prefer the strawberry or raspberry or grape or orange, those sweeter things. But Outshine, that's the variety or the brand that we really like. And talking about popsicles, of course you need a freezer to put them in. We have actually 4 freezers. We have we have like the freezer with your refrigerator, the one upstairs. We have an old refrigerator in the basement, and that has a small freezer. It's a real small, really old refrigerator that still works really great. And then we have 2 big stand-up freezers. Well, one of our freezers died. It has been a very sad occasion. Thankfully, we didn't have much meat in it, but I lost a lot of vegetables, and it's just one of those things. There's nothing you can do about it. The freezer was probably at least 25 years old, if not older than that, and it come from when Miss Cindy still lived in Black Mountain. She found it at the Habitat for Humanity thrift shop there in Asheville, and she immediately bought it, and then we had to come out there and get it, and it served us well all these years. It was old then, and we've had it for 25 years. It seems like Matt found a date on it, but now I can't remember what it was. But it's a really old one. But it died, so it's dead.
That's so sad. And y'all only paid, the thing about that gets me is you paid $50 for that freezer. And the freezer is like 3 feet taller than I am. I mean, it's a big one. Gigantic freezer, and you paid $50 for it.
All those years ago. Well, of course, the first thing we did after we had to clean up and do all that was to look for another freezer like that. So we called a lot of the local places that have things, like not necessarily a thrift store. What would you call it? Like
used appliance store?
No freezers of any kind. Of course, we want another big one. We need a big one. So the one that we're getting did not cost $50, sadly. It cost a lot more than that. But we really utilize freezer space a lot because of putting up so much food, and then because Matt harvests meat, deer, we got to think about that. Thankfully, the deer meat is in the other freezer, so we did lose a small amount of meat, we lost was not deer meat. That's like our prize, what we like the best.
It was just beef, which stinks because
mostly
beef is so expensive now. But.
And it wasn't that much, thankfully. It was like we didn't have that much in there. So mostly it was vegetables, mostly.
Yeah.
Sad. But it's just one of those things.
Yeah, those things happen. I cannot believe how hot it is. Someone's going to comment about how much water I'm drinking, but it is, I'm like dripping sweat just sitting here. It's so hot.
It is so hot, and while me and Corey can come out here and kind of just rest in the heat, poor Matt and other people that have to work in it, it's so miserable for him. He was outside working all day yesterday, and he was just drained when he got home. It's just so hot. and the humidity is right now is really bad. We get a lot of hot weather and we have high humidity, but this is kind of unusual to the point that they're like, giving the little alerts that you need to drink water, and if you add in the humidity, the temperature is more like 105 or 110 or something.
And the windows, I knew it was hot. That my windows at home are fogged, and then Olive's leash, just the metal part, just the little metal carabiner thing of the leash. As soon as I took her outside this morning, that was wet. Like it was condensation from coming inside the cool house outside, and I was like, oh man, it must be hot if it's like that.
Yeah, I always, during the weekdays, because Matt leaves so early for work, the chickens are not off the roost. So during the weekdays, I let the chickens out and feed them first thing in the morning. He does it on the weekends. But every morning when I go out, usually even in the summer, you're kind of like you have a fresh air feeling right when you step out on the deck to go to the chicken lot. This morning, I've stepped out and I was like,
assaulted.
Oh my gosh, it's like I stepped into a hot tub. It was just crazy.
It feels like the beach to me. When you go to the beach
and
you go outside, the heat like almost hits you in the face and is oppressive. That's what it feels like.
Thankfully, we don't usually deal with that very often, and hopefully this will move on out. And even though it's warm, it'd be 80s in the 80s and 90s in the summer here. That thickness is not typical for the mountains.
No.
Thankfully.
You see that lizard way out there?
I see him now.
There.
And Corey's looking at a lizard. I see him now at the other end of the porch. We have a lot of lizards.
We've got tons of them.
Tons of lizards. What do you call, I don't know their real names. We call the blue tail ones.
Skinks. I call them dinosaur lizards.
And then those are I think those are the real name of them is like the eastern brown fence lizard, eastern fence lizard.
But they look like little
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs.
They look like little dinosaurs, yeah.
They're really
we have a lot
cute.
of them.
Like, they're especially cute when they're like that big, the
they're
babies.
so tiny, you can see them. And they run. So I wonder if they ever fight each other, the skinks and them.
I don't know.
And then we have not just the blue tail ones, the like olive colored, but more like a skink.
Yeah, I would say it's more brown, and a lot of the times they'll have like an orange on their face, kind of.
And we just let them live, though.
They're cute.
They're cute. Granny's terrified of them. She's terrified of everything, though, but she's terrified a lizard's going to get in her house, and it's a real fear for her.
She's petrified, and a lizard did get in her house one day when me and Katie were there. She about fell. She was in a chair, but she almost fell getting out of the chair. And I was like, don't panic, we'll get it out. It went in there, and we could not find it. But 3 days later, we were in there, and I seen something move out of the corner of my eye. Lo and behold, it was that lizard, albeit it was a lot skinnier. But it was by the screen door on the other side of the house, and we kind of eased over there and opened the door, and it went out.
Yeah. And she don't like lizards, but they don't bother me. I like to see them running around. My greatest fear of things like that is, Corey?
Rats.
Rats and mice. That's what I don't like.
They do not even remotely scare me.
I don't like them.
I don't want them in my
like
house,
Granny over that. I would be screaming and jumping and just hysterical over them. I don't care about snakes, and I don't care about lizards. I don't really care about spiders anymore. I used to when I was younger, but they don't bother me. It's just the rats and the mice that I don't like.
Rats,
the scurrying.
That doesn't bother me. I even think that's cute.
Yeah, you think it's cute.
And snakes, I'm not even remotely afraid of snakes. What I'm afraid of, I guess, is certain spiders and insects that just don't look right. That have too many legs. Oh, I don't even like to think about that. Just, not centipedes. As long as they're on the ground, and they're just like a worm, it's not freaking me out. But if they're even a little bit tall, no. Forget it. I don't like stuff like that.
Speaking of Granny, she is really excited right now. She got all of the windows in her house replaced. She'd had, one replaced last year?
Yeah, maybe just one,
maybe
two.
just one or two. And then windows are hard to get, and then we had she has two big, huge picture windows, and those it took like, 8 months for them to make them and send them. Anyway, but she's had them all replaced now, and she is so excited. She's so happy about that. That's all she wants to talk about is her new windows. And the first windows, the windows they replaced were original to the house. So the house was built in like 1974, something like that, 1974. So they were old and they were never any good. And an interesting story about one of them. It's like I knew about the story, but I knew it my whole life growing up in the house, but I'd forgot about it. I hadn't even thought about it in 20, 30 years probably. And I had to help her move stuff away from them, as the people, or as the one man come to install them. And as we were moving stuff in the dining room area of her kitchen, she said, so that he could get to that one, she said, you remember one part of this is plexiglass. And I said, oh, I forgot about that. One whole pane of the big picture window was plexiglass. So I had never thought about it. I just, because I grew up like that. But then I said, so how did that happen? Why is that plexiglass? I didn't know the story behind it. I just always knew it was plexiglass when I was growing up. And she said that her and Pap had went to, it back then, that in the early 70s, there wasn't anywhere local to actually buy windows like that. So they went to Cleveland, Tennessee. She said, we took somebody's truck, but I don't remember whose it was, and got them. And then they brought them back. And then she said the day that they were putting in that one, Pap and Uncle Henry, Pap's brother, was putting that one in. Somehow, she didn't remember how, but one pane of it broke. They broke it putting it in. And she said, instead of going all the way back to Cleveland to get another one, or and they were paying rent, and they really wanted to be in the house, and they were just in a hurry, and that was Pap's solution. He somehow, I don't know where, I'm sure locally he must have bought it, but a piece of plexiglass, he got it and he put it in there. And it's amazing when you think about it. It served his family till he's gone, all those years till he's dead and gone, and that window was plexiglass. And you didn't really notice it when you was looking out at it. It just looked like glass. You didn't pay any attention.
I never knew it was plexiglass until a couple years ago, and I was like, you're kidding me.
Yeah, I know. I knew it, but I just kind of forgot about it. Hadn't thought about it in forever. But it's kind of interesting story that it served them all those, served us all those years, even though that was him kind of making do with what he had ready access to. Also thinking about them wanting to be in the house quickly. I barely remember like the moving in part. I don't remember none of that. I remember the other house we lived in, and then I remember being in that house. But since Pap died, one time when I was talking to Granny, and she's just telling me stuff, she's mentioned, we were talking about our uncle, Pap's Uncle Frank, my great Uncle Frank, but something about him, and she said that he bought all the doorknobs for our house. And I said, what do you mean he bought all the doorknobs for the house? I missed that somehow. I never heard that story. She said, well, me and your daddy was so happy, so in a hurry to move in because we didn't want to pay the next month's rent, that we moved in and we didn't have any doorknobs. I said, we moved in and we didn't have no doorknobs? She said, yeah, there wasn't no doorknobs on none of the doors when we moved in. And which I found really interesting, because again, Granny's so scared of everything like we were talking about that she actually lived in a house that didn't have a way to lock the door. I found that just amazing, that part of it. But then I was like, so how did Uncle Frank why did he buy the doorknobs? And she said, well, he come to visit and he noticed that we didn't have any, and he said we really needed to get them, and he just went and bought them all. Said he was going to buy them. And she said, so he bought every doorknob in this house.
I didn't know that.
And I thought that was just the greatest story. I was like, I've never heard that. I don't know what's more amazing, that he bought all the doorknobs, or that Granny spent several nights in a house without doors that locked, because she's so paranoid and scared of everything. Anyway, so that was in the days of kind of making do. We'll share one more update with you before we get back to our apples. Last video that we kind of did like this, I talked about a logo. So I do have the logo, and I will put it here in the video so that you can see it. So our next step now is, and there's different variations of it, I should mention that. I won't put all of them, but there's different variations. But I really am pleased with how it turned out. Kind of, you can see the Celebrating Appalachia, but then you can see, the pig and the acorn kind of give a nod to the work that I've done since 2008 on the blog Blind Pig and the Acorn. If you've never visited me there, I hope that you would. There's literally, since 2008, all these writings. I have most all of it's my writings, but I do have guest posters sometimes, so you can read those, but lots of different things, all about Appalachia, all of it about Appalachia and about our life. People that have been reading The Blind Pig, many of you I know, since 2008, you have literally seen Corey and Katie grow up, literally. You've seen them grow up. So, I remember just off the top of my head a post that I wrote one time where they were had got in trouble about something, and I wrote about about having the blues, and at that time they had the blues that they couldn't go to the contra dance because they were in trouble, for whatever. But then to go from that and then see their, as then they went to high school, of course, and then to college, and then get married, you know, and Katie's starting her wonderful business and just so much growth. To go from the days I wrote about how I was annoyed at homework, you know, thinking of 6th, 7th grade homework, to then now they're grown. Anyway, so lots of different things you can read about on The Blind Pig and the Acorn, from, like I said, the rich culture of Appalachia for sure, but also our family, a lot of that. So I hope that you enjoyed this little talk. Be on the lookout for more information about what we're going to do with that logo. I hope to have some t-shirts. I asked for ideals, and a lot of you give such wonderful ones. I'd never even thought of an apron, but that makes perfect sense. So me and Corey will be working hard on that, and hopefully be able to offer some merchandise soon. And as always, we just hope you keep dropping back by, celebrating Appalachia, watching our videos, and also The Blind Pig and the Acorn, and reading what we write on there, and helping us celebrate Appalachia. We could never say enough how much we appreciate each of you.
And never forget, do your homework first, play later.
That's the message on Corey's raisins that she was eating. And then she said, thank goodness I don't have homework. There's a really funny clip somewhere of Katie and Corey kind of doing these rapid fire questions, and it's funny. I think it's what makes you anxious. And Katie says homework, and I don't even have any because she's grown. You know?
Yeah.
I'm like, that is the funniest thing when she says that. She's like, you're saying it. You're like, what makes you anxious? And she's like, homework, and I don't even have any. She's not even in school.
Still makes me anxious.
You can tell, though, that was a struggle for Corey and Katie, was homework, yeah. And then, therefore, it was a struggle for me. I will tell one more story just because it's funny, and then we will really go. But this is a funny story. So when I was in school, I was not like Corey and Katie. Homework was not a struggle. It might have been a pain, but I wanted to do good and do everything just like the teacher said. So I really, really kept my mind focused and did good, made good grades and all that. Corey and Katie really could care less about their homework. They did okay. They did graduate with enough academic honors to get a scholarship, so they did okay. But they were not into school like I was, that part of it. Anyway, Paul was probably kind of, as far as me and my brothers, I was younger than Steve, so I don't really remember as much about him, but Paul didn't really care either until he got to college, and then he excelled and won awards and done all that. But in school, he didn't really care. But I was the one that cared. But anyway, Pap told this funny story, told me when Corey and Katie was struggling with homework, and I was complaining about it, I'm sure, and he said my older brother Steve said he struggled with homework, and he said he was in about, I don't remember if it was 6th, 7th grade, something like that, but a local man that we was like, practically, he grew up with Pap, so he was like, part of our family, almost part of our family circle, that we all knew him. Pap had grown up with him, and then he taught all Pap's kids. But anyway, he said one day he seen him, he was Steve's teacher, and one day he seen him at the store, and he said, you're going to have to let up on the homework. It's really, causing a problem at my house, and Steve's having a hard time. And he said, well, I don't notice that he's having I don't notice that he's having a hard time. His grades are really good. And Pap said, I told him, those ain't Steve's grades, those are my grades. Because he was having to help him so much, So I always thought that was so funny. Pap said, I told him, those ain't Steve's grades, those are my grades. I'm the one doing that work. Yeah. I'm the one having to help him every night, and you're going to have to let up on it. Anyway, that was a funny story from Pap. I felt like that too, but I didn't ever go tell Corey and Katie's teachers, that's actually my grades, you're making me work too hard at home. But they did have some great teachers. I'm not throwing off on the teachers. That was just the nature of homework, where I said I did mine and handled it and didn't need Granny and Pap's help. And Corey and Katie was like Steve. They needed a lot of help.